I'm Shar Banerjee, and this is Books That Built Me. I'm an ex-executive turned leadership coach specializing in people managers. My job is to get people out of their manager headspace and into their leadership growth space. I typically work with clients to build leadership DNA and self-leadership muscles in either group programs or one-to-one coaching. But on this show, we're going to dive deep into the stories of other leaders. And it all starts with a book that they believe has fueled their passion, influenced their decisions, and turned book lessons into life lessons. Welcome to Books That Built Me. Today, I'm in conversation with Quinn Simpson, and in today's episode, we are going to be discussing A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I'm so glad you could join us today. Here we go. Thanks so much for being here, Quinn. First of all, wanted to say, love that we're doing this. This is so fun.
Me too.
And B, let's actually hear it from you. Like, who are you and what is the work that you do in this world for the people who are listening?
Well, it's funny when you ask me that, my brain wants to go in 27,000 open tabbed discussions about who I am. I always feel like I want to remind people that I'm a human. I feel like that's who I am in this world. I'm a human having, or I'm a soul having a human experience, or whatever that line is. But I do feel like I am someone who always wants to contribute, no matter what it is. My focus is mainly around education. My focus is mainly around human development and being the best version of ourselves. I'm writing a young adult novel. I've been doing that for 2 years. I run a company that works with teachers and brings coaching into schools. And I'm also starting an education facility in Toronto. So I feel like everything that I stand for is, let's be human. Let's just do our best in this lifetime and let's contribute as much as we can.
I love that. He talks about the book that we're talking about talks very much about the being and the doing and the intersection of the two. So I love that you brought together the themes of what it is that you do in this world and why it matters and how that shows up in a material world, right? So going into it, this is the book that we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. A New
And my
Earth.
other copy that I also realize I now have. I can be a bookseller for Eckhart.
A New Earth, Create a Better Life by Eckhart Tolle, who is the author of The Power of Now. But this is the book that, when I had kind of messaged you about this, you were like, this is the one. And it's like a resounding, this is the one. So let's dive into like what has happened for you to say that with such clarity.
I feel like I need to wind you back to the first time I read it, because that is probably why I say it. And in some ways it's because of the time I was in my life and how it morphed to change me. So I just landed so my father had died in 2007. It's now January, February 2008. And I saw that Oprah and Eckhart were going to do this like series of conversations around this book.
Yeah.
And that's what appealed to me, because I'm not a very good reader. I'm not I don't learn in traditional ways. I have to teach myself a lot of the time. And I thought it'd be cool to follow along a book with them having these weekly conversations. And it literally just so happened I was moving to London. So my dad had died the year before. I moved to London, left my mom, which was hard. And then I had this beautiful book telling me to just be and to allow myself to awaken and quiet my mind. And his story of, feeling like he wanted to commit suicide and then thinking to himself, and that idea of witness, that we're witnessing our own experience, all of that. If you can picture my 23-year-old self, I'm sitting in a Starbucks in South London eating, I used to eat these like really delicious ginger muffins that they had. And I was like, I need to go and do things. All my friends are doing things. We just graduated university. We've got to go get a job. And I was like, no, I need to be. And it was just telling me like, stop trying to do and just focus on quieting the mind, paying attention, being mindful.
Yeah. So there you are in that coffee shop deciding that you're not going to do as much as everyone else around you
Hmm.
and you're going to exist a little bit differently.
Hmm.
And that was the first time that you sort of came across this book. It sounds like the videos were also very impactful, like the series with Oprah.
They were. It was really grounding and unifying to see all these people. I mean, like they were like, if you watch the videos now, they're hilarious because they're on
Oh yeah.
YouTube
Yeah.
and they're first of all super blurry, which is funny because it's Oprah stuff and yet it's blurry. But it is really blurry. And then also they keep talking about how great Skype is.
Okay.
Like, isn't Skype so great? We love Skype. Skype's so cool. But it did make it possible for these random people from all over, mainly all over the country, like all over the states,
Yeah.
were coming online and asking their questions to Oprah and Eckhart. And, everyone was like going into their books and like, right here, you say this. And
Yeah.
it just, I wasn't alone. Like, I think I felt pretty alone at that time. And, I'd moved to a new city and all those types of things. And I didn't feel so alone. And I also, again, I'm not a great reader. And so having accountability every week, we read a
Right.
chapter.
Right.
That was it. And so I went to my Starbucks, I had my chapter, read my chapter, whatever,
Yeah.
came back, and then I'd watch that. Like I would think it was live and we'd do it live and then I'd feel a little different.
Mm. I love that you almost had this book club. Like you had a
I
global
did.
book club, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
That's so
did. It
cool.
was a full out. I would say that's what the intention was.
Yeah.
And the impact of that was deeply profound on my learning experience, but I also think on how it ingrained into me because I wasn't just hearing my own internal voice understanding this work, if you call this work,
Yeah.
like the work that's in here was also being experienced by other people who were
Mhm.
having these deeply human experiences and then sharing them. So it was like I was almost like taking on their learning too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is like this almost compounding effect of what it means to truly learn. Like you're not just learning through the pages and through your own experience, but that in itself gets compounded through the reflection and sort of like the mirroring of others' experiences too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. And you have two copies. And you said something about the first time I read it, i.e.,
Well,
there's more.
well, that's a story in itself. Although I think it's on this. Yeah, here it is. So I read it April 2008, June 2015, August 2016, April 2021, and then I need to add August 2023.
Yeah.
So that would be 5 times. I'm
Oof.
sure I picked it up at other times.
Yeah.
But no, the reason that there are multiple copies, I actually don't really know where that one comes from, to be perfectly honest. But that's fine. The other copy, if anyone ever watches this video and has my other copy,
That's so funny.
please do send it to me. So it says here, you see, I read it in 2015 again. So I read it in 2008, then I left it for 7 years. And when I read it in June of 2015, I was about to walk the Camino de Santiago.
Mm.
And in preparation, so first of all, my now husband and I broke up. So he was my boyfriend. We broke up in May. And then I read this book to recenter myself, to come back to me, because I felt like part of me had like been lost in losing him. And then I walked the Camino, and before we left, I brought it with me. And then I sent it to Joe. I went to the post office and I mailed it to him. And I said, I think you need this book more than I do. And I had written all over it in every little corner of it, underlined everything.
Right.
And then he lost it.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so brutal.
I know. So when we got back together, I was like, do you still have my book? And he was like, no.
And you're like, and break up again.
Yeah. So then I bought a used one, hoping
Okay.
there'd be some underlines by
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
And then when I've reread it, I've done my best to like add in my thoughts. But of course, if I could ever find that real version, I would take it home with me.
Yeah.
In an
You
instant.
know what? And I have this vision for your book. It's making its way to somebody else who needs to read it.
That's what I had to really fully feel. Like it was lost without being lost. It was left to give to another person. And actually the way Joe and I got engaged was he found a cork on a beach and used the cork to propose to me, which was clearly somebody else's garbage, but perfectly left to be my engagement ring. So, you know.
Sorry, a cork is the engagement ring? I need to see this.
Yeah, literally. It's upstairs. I could show it to you.
Oh
It's
my
got
God.
numbers on it
Yeah.
that are my numbers. So that when I saw those, I bawled my eyes out because not only was it pretty random that he did
Yeah.
it with a cork, it was also, of course, random that my numbers that I needed to be on that cork were on that cork. And yeah, I always said I thought of him as my penguin, and penguins give pebbles to share that they want to be together. And so that was his pebble. Although he did give me like another beautiful stone. I just don't wear
Yeah.
rings. So
This is so beautiful.
I don't know how that showed up in this
Yeah. Well,
conversation, but
here we
why
are.
not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have
exactly.
your penguin, the cork
Yeah.
ring. Like, this is great. Okay. So I know that you've dog-eared this book, as I
Yeah.
have, but
Yeah.
you've also mentioned to me that you have double dog-eared some pages, like
I know.
really big dog ears, because you're like, let's get into
Big
it.
dog ears.
And I this is it, right? Like,
Mhm.
part of why I do this kind of book club podcast thing is that books change us in ways that are, like, we have no words left for them. They truly impact the direction of our lives. And for me, it is so clear that now you've read this book 5, 6 times. And with every reading, it's like a new, like, something has shifted. So let's get into like the most impactful parts of this book. And maybe we can get into some of those major big dog ears. What's one of them that you want to share with us?
Yeah, so I purposefully didn't want to be so prescribed in that way. Like I didn't
Yeah.
choose one beforehand, but I just flipped it open. And I think that's kind of the vibe of the book for me.
Yeah.
Joe used to say, I can just open it up and it's no matter what I read will make an impact. And I kind of feel the same way. So the one that I just opened, which has a big dog ear on the right, but I'm going to go to the left for a second. It says the egoic mind is completely conditioned by the past. And essentially the ego, I circled the ego and I wrote the past.
Mm.
And then going further, it says its conditioning, excuse me, its conditioning is twofold. It consists of content and structure.
Content and structure. I
Mm-hmm.
remember that part being about form, right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, there was, and I think the example that they used was for your kids, and the content being like the form in which you speak to your child if it's about structure alone. Get this done, let's hurry up, time for this, move it, and so that's you providing structure for your child's life. And in the absence of the other type of content, which is let's just be with each other,
Mm.
and like the soul of me sees the soul of you, if that is not present, then there's, it's incomplete. It's incomplete,
Mm-hmm.
the content that you're creating for your kids. Well, that was a section that you talked about content and form, right?
Yeah, well, and I think it's a piece that he comes back to as well.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest awakening for me is its ties to sociology because that's what I studied at university.
Yeah.
And the social psychologist professor that I loved, or not professor, theorist, I guess.
Yeah.
He talked about the I and the me,
Mm.
and I really related to that because I felt like it was very simple. I like simple frameworks. And it was essentially saying that the I is like the innovator that's like, I want to do this. And the me is the ego, if you will, but the society within you that's like, well, if you do that, this is what society will think of you. And if you do that, this is what society will think of you. And I think that the recognizing that the ego is shaped by the past for me means it's not useful right now because you're in the present. You're not in the past, you're in the present. And so its value is completely irrelevant to a degree. And it's not to just like throw it away and give it no meaning whatsoever. It's just not to give it too much meaning. I think
Mm.
that's where we get stuck a lot is not recognizing what we need to give our attention to.
Yeah.
And that's the part more than anything that I connected with the book, and to this day
Yeah.
continue to connect with.
You know what's coming to mind is like there's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like if
Mm.
the ego is built in the past, then what you're doing today by catering to that is creating this loop where it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy of I've got to keep up with the past.
Hmm. Hmm.
As opposed to like maybe that's not important anymore. And maybe that actually has no bearing on today and the future.
Yeah, and the more that we can appreciate the now, and of course, like his other books were about that too, like
Yeah.
the power of now,
Yeah.
stillness speaks, all of that. I think that why I liked this one being different was it right off the bat was like, you're not going to get this unless you're ready for this.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't meant for everyone. This awakening that is taking place in some people is going to take time, and that's okay. But rooted in, in its core is the recognition of non-duality. We are all one. We are all here together, and there's nothing you need to do. The doing is actually the problem, in a sense, or it's where we get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. The doing is the problem. It's where we get stuck. And it's the being that doesn't get that airtime and that spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It gets discredited a
Mm.
lot of the time. When you're not like, there was such a, actually, I can't believe I'm talking about this, but this is about books, so I'm going to go into it.
Go,
There's this
go.
beautiful children's book that's actually an adult book, I think, but a children's, I don't know, when it's like an adult picture book and you're not really sure if it's for me or them, but you read it to them and then you like it too.
Yeah.
So it's called Hope for the Flowers.
Mm.
And not to give away the book, but in essence, it's about two caterpillars who are climbing the caterpillar pillar. And it's all the caterpillars like going up this pillar, and they have no idea what's at the top, but they all know they have to go up the pillar.
Right.
So they're just like, we have to go. And then suddenly this other one, and there's two of them start talking. They're like, well, you didn't know where we're going? And I don't know where we're going. We have to get up there. Well,
Right.
what's going to be up there? And they don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
And then eventually they get fed up and they're like, let's just go somewhere else. And they go and they live this like amazing life. Like, it's incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
But one of them gets bored of being. So it goes back to the pillar to do.
Right.
Got to get it to the top, got to get to the top.
Yeah.
And then kind of gets closer to the top. And meanwhile, the other one turns into a butterfly.
Yeah.
And then goes and is like, hey, we can be butterflies.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a butterfly?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what, that's a metaphor and that's a children's story and whatever. But I feel like in a lot of ways, that's what Eckhart is trying to say to you is like, you can go and be a caterpillar and you can get to the top and you'll probably feel the exact same way. Or you can stop and be and turn yourself into a little cocoon and turn into a butterfly if you want.
Yeah. I feel like you said that you don't want to give it away, but I want you to give it away. What happened to the other caterpillar?
Well, there's yellow. They're called Yellow and Stripe.
Okay.
And so Stripe is like going up to the top and he's like desperate to get there. And Yellow is like flapping her wings and saying like, you can come with me. And
That's so yellow and that's so striped. Like perfect
right?
names, by the
I
way.
know.
Yeah.
They're really, really adorable. And the whole thing is like very black and white, except for yellow. Yellow is the only color within the whole book.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then he's like, oh, are you sure? And he doesn't know it's his caterpillar. Like he's a caterpillar after all, but he can't know that that's exactly, but he's like, she looks familiar. Like, I think I need to listen. And they had heard about butterflies before, right? These caterpillars are going up there. They had heard about butterflies, these magical beings, but they didn't really know what a butterfly was.
Right.
And then of course, Stripe goes down, and then Yellow takes Stripe to where she became a a butterfly, and there's 3 cocoons, and the one cocoon, the first cocoon, I suppose, was the one who told Yellow about it. So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, the idea is also, and this is why you're doing this podcast, and why we're talking about this book, is transformation. It spreads like webs, and rivers flowing. I mean, we could do lots of metaphors here, but essentially, like, I can't really just transform in my own little box. I need you, and you
Yeah.
need me to transform. We need books, we need outlets. And so it's this other caterpillar that says to Yellow, she's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm making a cocoon. I'm going to become a butterfly." And she's like, "What? We can become butterflies?" He's like, "Oh yeah, you can do it if you want to."
Yeah.
So that's the person that like helps Yellow, and then Yellow helps Stripe, and then of course you can imagine they go become butterflies together at the end of the book. And
Yeah.
my the beautiful part to me is that we can all be butterflies, and we can all do this, and it's a choice that we can make or not make.
I love that. Oh,
Mhm.
thank you. And what was the book called again?
Hope for the flowers.
Thank you for giving it away. And that's
Mhm.
interesting that it's hope for the flowers.
I know. I don't actually, as I read it again to my son, I was like, I don't fully think I understand it, but don't butterflies pollinate flowers? This is where me and science are not friends,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but I'm
I
pretty sure butterflies have a very active role in flowers.
That sounds right. That's
Yeah, let's go with
bugs
that.
and the flowers
I
and the
think so.
pollination.
So
That
I think it's like hope. It's and actually, here's
yeah.
a nice connection.
Yeah.
What does Eckhart's book start with but a flower?
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So how there's a very strong link there, which is that like flowers are this incredible, beautiful thing that we have no meaning for
Yes.
whatsoever.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And hope for the flowers, I think in that book is that like we need caterpillars to become butterflies, or else we have no
Flowers.
flowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
So it's like you need to be audacious in order for other, like it all connects
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
bigger way that may not necessarily just, I don't know, start and stop with you. Like it never starts and stops with you.
Well, that's the non-duality part. It's
Yeah.
so easy to think we live in this world of you're you and I'm me, but we're one really. And the more that we come back to the belief that we are separate, the more miserable that we are. And
Yeah.
so, the other day, Rich Pearson and Andy Puttycombe founded Headspace. And I was on the phone with Rich, and he was just like, "Look, Quinn, I'm not trying to like tell you what to do and, shape your future, but you can go and do all these incredible things that you want to do, and you can try to get more teachers to be coaches, and you can, get your book into publishers' hands and do all those things. And you can be ambitious, and you can decide to go home and be meditative and compassionate with yourself, and be mindful and be present, and that will do almost just or more good for the world."
Mm.
So remember that as you step into your ambitious self and your goals, that like that thing, that person, that witness that you come back to is fundamental to your well-being and your development as a human.
Yeah. He closes with that because he says often that when you feel that your outer work is not matching the inner energy,
Yeah.
that's when you feel disappointment, dejection, all of the other negative stuff that you feel like it shouldn't exist because you're doing good in your world. Like you
Yeah.
are finding success as per the definition of what others have set. Not going back to Stripe and how he was climbing the pole, but Eckhart very much says that even if the good that you're creating is out and you're doing the work, if that's not being met with the inside world, then there's that disconnection. And then
Mhm.
there's that resistance to what does great output look like and why is it that there's dissatisfaction and unhappiness and all of those other things. So I think that those words are great. Like you can be ambitious and that's amazing, and there's that work, that inner stuff that you can't tune out.
And whenever I hear someone say something like that, like the immediately I'm hit with, and you don't need to do it until you're ready.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you're listening to this or you're hearing someone talk about this and it doesn't align and it doesn't resonate, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because it's a moment. Everyone's going to have a moment of clarity. Mine was when I was a lot younger than the average person. Like I was 14 when one of my friends died of meningitis,
Mm,
and my earlier time was like 7 and 11, where I had these very observant, clear moments for myself that I realized who I was and what I stood for. And when she died was the moment of like, and I'm never going to be anything but me, and
mm,
I'm never going to live any day other than like it's my last.
mm.
And that happened when I was that age, and it could happen for someone when they're 50 or 60, and there's no like better or right or whatever path. It just is. And I think that's I look at this book as an invitation, not a request.
Yeah.
And the invitation is there, and it will always be there, and you accept the invitation the moment you're ready, and not 1 minute sooner.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was actually reviewing some of the emails that I had with my executive coach from, I want to say 10 years ago. And it's so funny to me because in this email that I'm writing to her, I know that the next time we're going to meet, we're going to be doing some life purpose work. And she had conditioned me for it and she had prepared me. And in my email, I wrote to her, I don't think I'm ready. I'm getting really nervous thinking about our next session. I don't
Mm.
even know what that means. I don't know if I'm ready to think about it. It's making me, a bit jittery and nervous. Like I'm ready for it, but I'm also resisting it. And I just want you to know that that's the space that I'm in before
Yeah.
our session starts. And, now thinking back, I'm just so grateful for that. Like you said, it's so beautifully an invitation. It's not a, you must do this now and it's your time. It's the invitation. Like if it's time, it's time. And if you're ready, you're ready. And I remember too, working on my life purpose and the statement, I resisted it a lot. I thought, I don't, what is this thing that I'm doing right now? Like, what is
Hmm.
the importance of this? I have my routine and I'm doing my routine. And on the surface, everything looks great. Um, but it is a journey. It's a journey that when you feel called on to take the first step towards that journey, you're walking it. And that walk is just so gorgeous and so beautiful, painful and powerful all at the same
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess I'm curious, as a person that didn't read this book until now, what I don't know, like what was your awakening that might have been the same stuff in here but different? But yeah, I would love to hear from you what some of your moments were, or yeah.
I feel like this book has touched on a couple of the other books that I've read. The Alchemist comes to mind, like
Yep.
not in
Yep.
the exact same teachings, but in the theme of what it represents.
Yep.
And I feel like the part of the book that I thought was a good double click of something that I already know to be true,
Hmm.
which is to not fall in love with the thoughts that you have in your brain
Yeah. Yeah.
and to really question the part of you that's having the thoughts
Yeah.
versus the part of you that's having the emotions that are a consequence of the thoughts.
Yeah.
And I have this one part dog-eared because hello, I'm like you. There is this part where he talks about the duck with a human mind. Do you remember that
Well,
part?
no, we're page numbers so I can see.
Yeah, for sure. It starts on page 137, but he really talks about him watching nature and the lessons in nature. And so he talks about two ducks, and what happens after they get into a fight is that they separate, they float off
Yep.
into the
Yep.
opposite like the opposite direction, and then one of the ducks flaps its wings vigorously a few times, releasing whatever energy, and then it just kind of floats on away peacefully as if nothing happened. And so
Hmm.
now he then says, well, what if this duck had a human mind, right? He would keep the fight alive and he would create stories around why me? Why now? That jerk. He owes me this. I'm not going to let it go. How could he take my private space? And I'm never going to trust him again. And who does he think he is? And on and on. And he talks about how this spinning of tales and thinking can really take over days, weeks, maybe even years
Yeah.
of this duck's life. And as far as the body is concerned, like the fight is always alive. because the mind keeps it alive. And so now he really brings it back to the human, and he says, well, humans live like this all the time, right? Your mind and the mind made story of like, this is me, this is my story, and it keeps it
Mhm.
going forever.
Yeah.
um that really underscored to me the importance of what it is that we do to trick ourselves into feeling and latching on to that feeling and keeping that thought alive.
Well, and that last piece of like, our ducks lesson is this: flap your wings, which translates as let go of the story and return to the only
Yeah.
place of power, the
Yeah.
present moment.
Yeah.
That, for me, I literally this week started a course which is called trauma awareness coaching.
Mhm.
And I'm taking the course for two reasons. One, because my husband experienced immense trauma as a child.
Mm.
And before I knew that is when I gave him this book. And
Mm.
I think a part of me knew that he was really wrapped in his ego,
Yeah.
and he didn't really know how to separate himself from the egoic mind. And that was just truth for him. And I knew that he needed that, but I didn't really know why he needed it until 2017, when he shared with me some of the pivotal trauma experience and really, horrendous experiences that he had. And on the course the other day, they showed a polar bear shaking vigorously to
Mm.
get rid of the trauma. And whether that, like, somebody on the course was like, how do we know that that was what that is? Like, it's like, we
Sure.
can't speak to polar bears. We can't be like, hey, did you just get rid of your trauma? Is that what just happened there? Is that what was happening with the duck? Like, we don't really know, right?
Yeah.
We're making meaning, which
Yeah.
is cool. And I like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I do find, and some of my friends say, when you have a trauma experience or you feel negative thoughts, like, wipe them out of your body.
Mm.
Brush it out, because it will live and stay in there, and its toxicity will be harmful for you physically and mentally. And I think the washing of the brain, or the brushing of the brain, is what he's calling us to do. And the only way to do that is to literally go, oh, like, luckily I have this right here. And it's yellow.
Yeah, I just
They're
noticed
yellow.
that. Yellow. For
They're
anyone
kind
who's
of dying, but
anyone
that's
who's
okay.
for anyone who's listening, you're holding yellow
Oh, yes, I'm
flowers.
holding, of course, for anyone who's only listening, I am holding yellow flowers. Yeah, and be like, they're so yellow. And do you know how many dinner parties I always say, I'm like, oh, I just wish that people would stop talking about everything they're talking about and talk about how peppery arugula is,
Oh,
or rocket, whatever you call it.
yeah.
I just I crave that. I don't care about how your kid is doing and
Yeah.
what you did on Sunday and what your plans are for the summer. I don't care. I just don't. I want to talk about the food you're eating, the sensations you're feeling in your body, whether you are questioning your own fate right now or whether you're just living your life. I don't know. I crave that. And I feel like, again, the invitation in this book is like, find the people who are able to do what you can do, and call the people forth that need this book.
Yeah.
He didn't really like tell you to do that, but I felt like he was really, awakening to your life's purpose is for all of us. So all of us to awaken, and we need each other to do that. And by some of us doing it, we all will.
Yeah. There's so much of that yellow caterpillar that I see in you right now. I just wanted to put that out there.
I'm yellow. Hi.
You're yellow.
I'm
Yeah.
yellow. I know.
Yeah.
I really resonate. It's funny because I've read that book before,
Yeah.
and actually the person who told me to read it said, I told her Joe and I's story, my husband and I's story, and she said, you should really read Hope for the Flowers. It sounds like your story with him.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. I don't know what the book was. And then I read it, and he was reading it to Theo the other night and cried, of course.
Oh my gosh.
Because it really is like,
Yeah.
it's hard for Stripe to leave the
Yeah.
It's also really funny that I don't know if caterpillars actually go up pillars. I don't know if that was like a made up thing, but the caterpillar pillar was it makes me emotional thinking about it. It's like, it's just what we feel like we were made to do. We're supposed to run the rat race or get on the thing and beat ants in the subway and,
Yeah.
sheepify.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of
And
my biggest gripes about education, period,
I know.
is that that's the mentality that everybody is taught. And it's so subtle and it shows up in primary years too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like this, yeah, there's a pillar. Let's all
Yeah.
glorify the pillar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it gets perpetuated by generational
Sure.
beliefs and how the way of work goes and we to stop that from happening. It's books like these,
Yeah.
it's conversations like these, and it's recognizing that it's not a quick process. It's slow and it's trickling, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost like, like a drop can turn into a stream can turn into a river can turn and now we have the Niagara Falls, right? Like this
Yeah.
huge thing that you cannot unfeel or unsee or unbe with. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ellen Langer, who has written several books, and I just love her. I think she's hilarious and really smart. But she's been studying mindfulness. I think probably by now it's been 50 years, because it was about 40 years, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But she's been studying mindfulness by studying mindlessness,
Ooh.
meaning stop being so mindless, pay attention, see things. And the more that we ask ourselves questions and force ourselves to make decisions and walk home
Yeah.
a path we've never taken before, the
Yeah.
more we keep our brain like open to new experiences, novel experiences,
Yeah.
and malleable, the more mindful we're able to be,
Yeah.
and the better off we will be. Like, she wrote a book called Counterclockwise, which was all about like the aging process and how to keep ourselves sharp. And I just think like it's not the only thing, because mindfulness is not just going to save everyone and every problem, but it sure helps
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot.
In fact, in this there was a part in this book where he was like, pay attention to your fingers right now. Like pay attention
Yeah.
to the aliveness of your hand,
Yeah.
even as you're flipping the pages. And there will come a time when you're speaking to somebody where you can feel the entire aliveness of your being if you're paying attention to that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
even your background, like, I didn't notice your really, really bright yellow books until now,
Oh,
but they're very bright and yellow.
oh,
There's
that's
two of them on the side there, you
honestly,
see?
that's an entire topic on its own. I was reading something about the brightness of books and the type of person that it calls to. Definitely me. I don't know if you
Like, whoa, shiny.
at an airport, at the bookstore, my body will find its way there. My hand will find its way like picking it out and flipping to the back and reading. Yeah. I
That's
can't help
awesome.
I can't help but purchase anything that kind of just draws my eye. And yellow and orange do that
Well,
for
it's
me.
funny because I have this whole like little orange section here, and I don't know if you can actually see it in here, but over
Oh,
here you
yeah.
can't see it; it's
Yeah.
behind the mic.
Mm.
But there's a little orange section, and I was like, "This is all orange. Like, should I have orange?" And I was like, "Well, I have a bunch of orange books, so I'm just gonna go with like the orange vibe." But it is an interesting part of books, because even like the two that I have, you have a different one as well. Like the whole "don't judge a book by its cover."
Yeah.
Like, literally,
Yeah.
yours is more vibrant. Yours is actually more of the book that you would pick up.
Isn't it
And
so
look, it
funny?
says create a better life.
Yeah. Oh, yours doesn't say that?
No, mine's awakening to your life's purpose.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I actually have two different ones. I have the 10th anniversary edition, which
Same.
includes a new preface by the author. Is that
Same.
yours too?
Yeah. I have the new preface by the author. Yes.
Yeah, and it's possible because I lived in the UK and I lived in America. So you
Oh,
might have a Canadian one, and I might have a British and an American one,
got it. So
which is
interesting.
just a whole other thing about publishing, which we're
Yeah.
definitely not going to
No,
get
we're
into.
not getting into that. Okay, so I have one final question for you, which is this book very clearly has built the you that you are. The Quinn that we are speaking to, the Quinn that we're in love with is definitely a consequence of how many, iterations of reading this book.
Yeah.
What's another book that you feel has really shaped you?
The I'm not great at reading fiction.
Mm.
And so along the way in my life, whenever I allow myself to, or not allow, push myself to read past the first 25 or 50 pages
Yeah.
and keep reading
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
to the
yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah,
That's part of it too. It was in school and it was grade 10, and the book Memoirs of a Geisha was deeply powerful for me because of the story, absolutely, but also the knowledge that it was written by a man
yeah. Mm.
and written by someone that was not a geisha. And it felt very much like we were enveloped into this world that we didn't understand. And I love the metaphor of books are either windows or mirrors. And this was definitely a window into a world that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And part of the learning assignment afterward was to write our own memoir.
Mm.
And that also was a huge learning experience for me. And I guess why it shaped me so much is interestingly paralleled to Eckhart's book, because it wasn't just like, oh, I read a book. It was like, I read a book and did a thing.
Mm.
I read a book simultaneously while a thing was happening and I was part of the thing. Like those weekly discussions was, and we had I think there was a workbook. I can't remember exactly, but I feel
Yeah.
like there were like questions to answer. Like
Yeah.
there was doing. And
Yeah.
I think that books can come and go in your life. They can just be a really good read. And then there's these ones for me where there's been more to them, either on purpose or just happenstance. Like obviously I didn't control the the assignment I was given around that book,
Yeah.
but I took it upon myself to really think through what would it be like to be a little boy growing up in Port Glasgow, which is where my father grew up,
Mm.
and to write a story about this little boy wanting to be a football star. Like it felt really, I felt very out of my depth
Mm.
doing that. And I think that made a huge impact on me, that like, we don't know what we don't know about people. We can make up what we want, but they might have pooped their pants and that's why they're driving so fast, or maybe like they're trying to get to their sick parent and that's why they cut you off. And all these things, we get frustrated, and like as he's saying, in our minds, we're like, they did this and they did this, and it's like, actually, can you step outside of yourself? And I think that's what the author did for Memoirs of a Geisha and what I did on that assignment. And so in a way they're tied,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Learning
it
by
really
doing.
shaped me.
Learning by doing is a big one for you, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's definitely my learning preference,
Yeah.
I will say, but I also think it's, for a lot of people, it does help ingrain. It helps to deepen your understanding versus keep it surface level.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell you my favorite line
Mm.
from this book, but I can tell you how it made me feel and how it made me change my behavior.
Mm. That's like,
Yeah, and I know we're about to finish, but I do want to say, and
yeah.
you can cut this if it's not relevant,
Yeah.
but you know, I did a dissertation in university, which was about the socialization process. And I was trying to prove that when a young teenager reads a self-help book, it is just as impactful as the socialization process as being with friends and family,
Right.
that a book can change you.
Right.
Now, the study didn't go so well because none of the teenagers read the book. They were all like, yeah, I'll totally read it. And then they were like, no, I didn't read it. And I was like, great.
That's awesome.
Uh, but the ones that did read it, I think there was a change. The ones that didn't read it, they were like, I just really would have rather heard it from a person. And that's actually why I became a coach, because
Right.
I felt like I needed to reach young people. And if it wasn't going to be through books, what was it going to be through? So that's what led me to coaching. But I always think back to that dissertation. I'm like, if only I was not 22 or whatever writing that dissertation. Like if I had actually been like a researcher, I would have set it up better. But I think about that a lot, and that like a book can change you, and it is kind of as impactful as another human being talking to you. It's a human being who wrote the book. There is a socialization process. Something is happening.
Yeah.
So
Quinn, you're crazy if you think I'm going to cut that part out, because that is beyond like that's exactly why I did that's exactly why I'm doing the thing that I'm doing right now,
yeah,
because that
well,
is my fundamental belief that
mhm.
a human being who wrote this, sure, it's words on paper, sure, I'm flipping through it, and I can't do that to a person. I can't flip you, but this is the closest that we can get to reaching the wisdom, the knowledge, the intel, the joy, stories, all of that amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And it's such a gift. It truly is such a
Mhm.
gift to talk about it, to deepen the learning, to really, really, really underscore your experience with that of another, and then hope to reach a different version of you, right? It all becomes possible from things like this and conversations like these. So
Mm.
thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it for this episode of Books That Built Me. If you've enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. It really helps support what we're doing here. Thanks for listening, and you can always find me on my LinkedIn at Sharp Banerjee. If you're dealing with a leadership challenge, I would love to hear from you and have you join our community. And of course, I'll talk to you next Tuesday on a brand new episode of Books That Built Me.